When somebody struggles with anxiety, one of the first places for us to start is for them to understand that they are not flawed or broken. And that's a big fear that a lot of people have, usually because they've tried so many things. Maybe they've tried counselling or therapy or medication, and nothing has either worked or fully resolved the issue. Or they focus on how long this has been going on for. And then they start asking questions like, well, why has nothing worked? And why has this been going on for so long? And is it because there's something fundamentally and irreversibly wrong or broken inside my head? And that's not the case. It's really important for people to understand this. So the analogy that I use to describe this is spelling. Now, bear with me. You might be thinking, what the hell has spelling got to do with anxiety? But this is an important analogy because it illustrates some important principles about how the brain functions and about how we learn things. So would you consider yourself to be good or bad at spelling? And one of the tests that I give people is, can you spell a word backwards? Right, so can you spell, for example, Africa backwards? Now, if you are good at spelling, you'll be able to do this pretty quickly and pretty effectively, because people who are good at spelling have learnt to spell visually. They've learnt how to create an image of the word inside their mind's eye. So if you can literally see the word inside your mind's eye, it doesn't matter if you're asked to spell it forwards or backwards. You just pick off the letters. People who struggle with spelling have learnt to spell phonetically, which is how the word sounds. And so they will sub-vocalize the word, and they'll repeat the word over and over and over and try and listen to the syllables and figure out what the letters are. It's like if you're trying to spell the word necessary. It's like is that a C or an S? Pretty sure it's a C. Is there one C or two? I'm not quite sure. And so they're trying to listen to it and they're trying to figure it out based off that. And that's where things like I before E except after C comes in, because now I need a whole bunch of additional rules to bridge the gap in my strategy. But then there's a few exceptions to that rule. So is this one of those exceptions? I'm not quite sure. And so the point I'm making is that the chances are when you were at school, you were never taught the difference between the different spelling strategies. You were just told, go away and memorize these words, and tomorrow we're going to test you. And some of the kids accidentally stumbled upon spelling visually. It worked well, they stuck with it, they got good results. The other kids unconsciously, without even realizing what they were doing, and accidentally stumbled upon spelling phonetically. It wasn't particularly reliable, but it got some results, and they didn't know any better. They didn't even realize there was an alternative to accessing the information. And so because they didn't know there was an alternative, they just stuck with what they knew. And so they became better and better and better at a very ineffective strategy. Now, what do we learn from this? The important thing we learn from this is that there are so many things in life that we have learned unconsciously. The chances are before watching this video, you weren't even aware that there were different spelling strategies or that there were alternatives. And the chances are you made an assumption that I'm either good at spelling or bad at spelling. And that's just something that you're born with, and you're either a good speller or you're not, and that's it. As opposed to recognizing that actually sometimes we just unconsciously, without even realizing what we're doing, we create a strategy in a certain area of our lives that is ineffective. And it meets our needs sufficiently that we stick with it, but we don't realize there's an alternative. And this is true in so many areas of life, not least of which how we meet our deep emotional needs that must be met one way or the other. You're going to find a way to meet these emotional needs, whether you're conscious of it or not. For example, the need for certainty. All of us need to feel certain. But if you have unconsciously created a strategy for meeting your need for certainty where you need to know with 100% guarantees that bad things will never ever happen, then that's a recipe for anxiety. Or perhaps your need for self-worth. If you have learnt to need validation externally, to look a certain way, to look like you're successful to a certain degree, to look like you've got a certain amount of money, to look a certain way physically, and you need that validation from other people to then feel like you're enough, that's a recipe for anxiety. Or perhaps your happiness strategy, something that I've spoken about before. If your strategy for being happy is waiting, you wait for this moment to be over. When I get this crap out of the way, then I can enjoy myself. And then you just wait for this moment to be over, and then the next moment to be over, and then the next moment to be over. And we do it on the micro scale, but also on the macro scale in terms of when I get to this destination in the future. When I get the house, the relationship, the money, whatever, then finally I'll be happy. And so we're constantly waiting for happiness instead of learning to bring the joy in each moment and choosing to live your life from the inside out instead of the outside in. And as we grow up, we learn strategies unconsciously for meeting our emotional needs, and we don't even realize that we're doing that. And then once we've got one, we tend to stick with it unless we become conscious of it and we choose to change it. But that's the key thing, is that you are not flawed or broken. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just that you have unconsciously and accidentally learnt a bunch of strategies that are not serving you. And if you choose, and if you're committed and you're dedicated, you can rewrite those, what we call neural pathways, those circuits, if you like, in your brain. You can rewrite those and install new strategies in their place that are much more effective, that then therefore mean that you no longer have to suffer with the symptoms of chronic debilitating anxiety, and you achieve the happiness and the joy and the emotional freedom that you finally deserve.